Great wisdom, O man, is found in the deep, amid that which still lies unknowing. Know the source as all that is light, as darkness is one with the source. Seek not the path, but ever more light upon the path. Listen closely, not with your ears, but with something deeper. There's a voice emerging from the silence, from the ages, from within. It's calling to you. Remember, because something in you already knows, doesn't it? You've heard this voice before, haven't you? This is not nostalgia. It's awareness reawakening. For this is the voice of Thoth. Or should I say, the Thoth? Because he never returned, he never left. He simply retreated behind the veil of materialism for a time, waiting for the moment when you, and many have waited for, the moment when you would be ready to remember. Some truths are timeless. Some wisdom predates history, but it's never outdated. It's the code spoken to every soul into eternity. So listen and remember even for an hour. I promise, it will change your life forever. The emerald tablets are not texts, not in the way you think of books, bound in leather or paper. They are frequencies, encoded memory, crystallized light arranged in the language of resonance. They are ancient, yes, but not because of age. They are ancient because they speak in the language of the eternal. And Thoth did not write them. He became them, as you are becoming something too. You've been told that gods are myths, and myths are fantasies. But the only real myth is the idea that you are only human. Thoth encoded the truth in form, in matter, in magnetic glyphs that can't be spoken but must be heard from the inside. They were hidden not in tombs, but in the very architecture of consciousness. In the blueprint of the universe itself. In your DNA. You see, the truth was never kept from you. It was buried in you, hidden in the only place they thought you'd never look. But you are here, and you are looking, not with your eyes, but with the part of you that has seen stars be born and galaxies collapse. The part that knows what your name has forgotten. That time is not linear, and neither is memory. That awakening is not a ladder, but a spiral. Each turn not forward, but deeper. Thoth knew. That's why he left not instructions, but invitations. So if you feel it, this pull, this tingling spine, this ache you cannot name, then know this, you are not being given something new. You are retrieving something old. A piece of you left behind in the halls of Amenti, in the silence between breaths, in the light between thoughts. This is just the beginning. They called him Scribe of the Gods, but that title was never quite right. He didn't transcribe their stories. He composed reality, a rhythm maker of realms, architect of cycles. Thoth was not just witness to cosmic law. He was its voice, echoing not across space, but across awareness. Not once, not long ago, but now, again, in you. You feel it. Don't deny it. That soft pulse behind thought, that electric edge in your dreamscapes. That is not imagination. That is contact, resonance, memory awakening not as story, but as sensation. You are not studying Thoth. You are sinking to him. And in that sinking you remember, thought is not thought. It is force. It is architecture. And you are not just a thinker. You are a builder, a dreamer who creates the dream. The emerald tablets say it plain, but not in plain words. They speak of soul ascension, of traversing dimensions, of merging with frequencies far beyond human form. But do not imagine this as fantasy. Do not mistake metaphor for myth. These tablets are alive. They breathe with the same pulse that beats behind your ribcage when you pause and feel truth. As above, so below. Yes, but hear this with new ears. It means not just that the stars reflect the psyche, but that the structure of everything, atoms, galaxies, thoughts, is one great hologram of intention. What you do within ripples without. What you imagine shapes what is. You are not a passenger on this earth. You are a participant in its making. And that knowing, that remembering, is what they hoped you'd never discover. The world has dressed you in distraction. Told you your mind is just reaction, you're worth a measure of productivity, your value set by others. It told you to seek outside, to consume, to obey. But the tablets speak from within, And what they say is this: the universe is not separate from you. It is projected through you. Can you feel it now? That the dream is lucid. That the pattern is speaking. Synchronicities that once felt random now align like beads on a thread, showing you that the curtain has lifted. The script, exposed. And beneath it, you, not as character, as author. And what of Atlantis? Oh yes, you've been told it's a myth. But myths are memories with the edges blurred. Atlantis is not gone. It's encoded. And you carry its signature. If you've ever felt the ache for a world more vibrant, more aligned, more true, you are remembering. In that land, before the fall, spirit and matter danced in union. Thought shaped form instantly. Sound sculpted space. And Thoth walked among them, not as deity, but as teacher. Not above, but within. That memory still flickers in your blood, in your bones. Not as nostalgia, but as blueprint. You are not lost. You are returning. To a wisdom not taught, but lived. To laws not enforced, but felt. To a power not seized, but recognized. And in that recognition, something changes. Not outside, not yet, but inside where it always begins. Because this is not entertainment. This is initiation. What happens when you stop chasing the truth outside and begin listening to the space it echoes in? A silence begins to speak. Not empty, not void, but full, pregnant with memory. You start to sense that the chaos of the world is not a mistake, but a mask. A camouflage meant to keep you looking outward while the real work waits within. Thoth knew this. That's why he didn't build monuments of gold. He built temples in vibration, altars in awareness. The truth, he knew, must be hidden in plain sight, buried in resonance. That's why the emerald tablets are not read. They are heard with the soul. Listen, can you feel how thought is not thought at all, but light? That each belief you carry bends the universe around it like gravity curves space? You were told thoughts are passive. But Thoth said they are commands. And now the command has been issued, not from above, but from you. A deep, quiet knowing that says, this is the moment I remember who I am. And what you are is not a name, not a job, not a body. You are frequency, pure intention encoded in form. You are the song of the cosmos briefly slowed into human shape. And when that song begins to rise again, when the tempo of truth grows too loud to ignore, the illusion breaks. Not in violence, in clarity. That's why the tablets aren't instructions. They're catalysts, activation keys for the architecture already within you. You were not meant to be led. You were meant to lead yourself. And when you do, something astonishing happens. The system loses its grip. Because systems are built on slumber. They function on forgetfulness. If you remember too much, if you reclaim the blueprint, you become untouchable. Uncontrollable. Not in rebellion, but in resonance. And resonance, my friend, is the true revolution. But it's not loud. Still. Still like the breath before birth. Still like the space between stars. That's why most miss it. They look for thunder, not tremble. They wait for a sign in the sky, while the sign is beating inside their chest. You don't need another prophet. You don't need another doctrine. You need presence. You need alignment. The tablets teach this. Thoth whispered it across time. Alignment is the gateway. Not belief. Not dogma. Alignment. When what you think, feel, speak, and do vibrate together like strings on the same harp. That's when the gates open. That's when the veils dissolve. And what lies behind them? Not heaven. Not escape. But a deeper earth. A remembered world. A field where thought and form are not two things, but one. Where desire doesn't chase, it attracts. Where will becomes reality. Where you are not seeking magic. You are the magic. You've tasted this. In dreams that felt more real than daylight. In moments when time slowed and everything aligned. In chills that ran down your spine without warning. That wasn't fantasy. That was the signal. The current. The frequency of truth brushing against your skin. And now it wants more than to visit. It wants to live here. Through you. In you. As you. So breathe. You are closer than you think. Breathe again. not as a habit, as a right. Let the air you pull in be more than oxygen. Let it be remembrance, because breath is the first key. Thoth said it, and every true initiate knows. The breath is a bridge between realms, between bodies, between the illusion of separation and the reality of the one. And when you breathe with intention, you begin to activate. Not powers, not tricks, but presence, alignment, knowing. You begin to feel time differently, not as a ticking clock, but as a spiral. Each breath a turn inwards, a descent toward the center, where you've always been. Thoth did not fear time. He moved through it like a weaver. He called it a spiral, not a line. And when you feel that, when you know it, everything you were taught begins to unravel. Because the system needs straight lines. It needs progress, clocks, deadlines. It needs you rushing, always chasing, never arriving. Because if you arrived, even for a moment, you'd realize there is nowhere to go. You are already there. You are already it. That's why Thoth spoke of time as training. A spiral that returns you again and again, not to repeat, but to remember more. To carry the flame one step higher, one octave purer, until finally the fire burns clear. And yes, you've been here before. Not metaphorically, literally, in different forms under different names. And if your heart is aching now, aching with recognition, it's because a cycle is coming full turn. The old you is cracking. The remembered you is rising. And in this turning, the world begins to look strange. Not false. Transparent. You see the patterns in people, in politics, in power. The loops, the lies, the lullabies. And you no longer fall asleep to them. You no longer nod and smile. You awaken, not in rebellion, but in radiance, in refusal to forget. Because now you see. The system was built not to contain you, but to conceal you. You, the infinite. You, the eternal. You, the being of light temporarily shaped into bone. And your bones remember, even if your mind resists, even if your lips still speak the language of limitation. Your cells know. Your soul sings. That's why you're here. That's why you haven't turned away. Because this isn't just a message. This is you calling yourself home. So don't just listen. Align. Don't just believe. Embody. You're not here to escape the spiral. You're here to rise through it. And now the spiral begins to speak through you. Not in words, but in how you move. How you pause. How you begin to choose not from fear, but from clarity. Because clarity isn't loud. It doesn't shout like fear does. It doesn't demand like ego. It simply is. Like a frequency you don't hear, but feel. Like a tone that doesn't end, only deepens. Thoth taught not as a preacher, but as a tuner. He showed the ancients how to attune the self like an instrument. Not to play songs for others, but to resonate with the source. And that resonance, that is the key. It's what real awakening feels like. Not fireworks, not ecstasy. Coherence. The feeling of being in phase with something you forgot you were always part of. And what does that change? Everything. You stop rushing. You stop proving. You stop trying to convince the world of anything. Because the moment you resonate with truth, you no longer need to announce it. Your field speaks for you. Your silence becomes louder than your words. That's why the emerald tablets never needed followers. They needed resonators. People like you who would read not with eyes, but with soul. Who would feel the glyphs vibrate behind the veil of language. Who would awaken not by learning but by remembering. That's why you were taught to laugh at these things. That's why society mocks mystics, burns witches, erases seers. Because a soul in resonance can't be ruled, can't be sold to, can't be distracted for long, carries a frequency that bends reality back into alignment. And the system, any system, depends on dissonance. It thrives on confusion. It feeds on your forgetting. But you didn't forget, did you? Not completely. That's why certain words make you weep. Why certain symbols make your skin tingle. Why you've always felt there was more, and why that more always felt just out of reach. It's because you were never supposed to reach for it with hands. You were supposed to become it. Thoth whispered this. The truth is not something to learn. It's something to vibrate with. So don't chase the tablets. Become the frequency they speak from. Don't seek knowledge. Seek coherence. Seek inner music. Seek the stillness between your thoughts where the spiral opens like a rose, revealing its ancient petals. Because the truth doesn't knock. It rings. And if you're quiet enough, you'll hear it inside your own remembering. Have you ever noticed how silence feels different when you're remembering? It isn't absence. It's presence. A density that grows behind the ribs, as if something invisible just walked into the room and settled behind your eyes. That's not imagination. That's you, more of you, arriving. Because remembering doesn't happen in the mind. It happens in the body, in the breath, in the field of awareness expanding like ink in water. And when that awareness expands far enough, time starts to fold. You stop thinking of before and after. You start sensing concurrence. Layers of you operating across frequencies, some dreaming, some watching, some waiting for this very moment when another version of you would finally say, yes, yes, I am more than I've been told. Yes, I remember the halls of Amenti, the blue fire that sang in silence, the teachers who spoke in chords, the lessons etched in light, not ink. I remember Atlantis, not as story, as scent, as sound, as sadness, a world of resonance lost to dissonance, a field of coherence shattered by ego. And yet, that memory isn't pain. It's a compass, because you didn't come here to mourn Atlantis. You came to reweave it, not as a city, not as myth, but as frequency. You carry its signature in your vibration, in your sensitivity, in your insistence that something about this world is off. That feeling isn't madness. It's message, a signal sent from a past that still exists in potential. Thoth encoded that signal not for the many, but for the few who would feel it, not understand it, feel it. Like you are now. The tablets weren't given to leaders. They were given to rememberers, to those who would stumble upon them in digital labyrinths and feel their heart ignite. Those who would begin to live from truth, not teach it. Who would become vessels for frequency, not vessels for fame. So here you are, no longer seeking, no longer performing, just tuning, just breathing, just remembering what it feels like to be whole. Not perfect, whole. That's when the real shift begins. Not in your job, your body, your status. In your signal. In the subtle harmonics you emanate without effort. And when your signal shifts, the field responds. The world rearranges. Reality recalibrates. Not because you forced it, because you remembered how to resonate. The subtle at first. Almost invisible. You walk into a room and the air bends. Conversations pause for a fraction of a second longer than they should. People look not with their eyes, but with something behind their eyes. They feel something they can't name but remember, because your field is no longer the same. It's ringing with something ancient. Not authority, not power, alignment. You've stopped projecting chaos, doubt, dissonance. You're not mirroring the noise anymore. You're broadcasting a signal that's older than fear. One that whispers, I know who I am, even when I forget, even when I fall, even when the world wants me to sleep, I remain awake. And that changes everything. Not instantly, not loudly, but steadily, because frequency doesn't argue. It doesn't convince. It doesn't debate. It simply is. And in its presence, distortion must choose. Align or disappear. This is what Thoth meant by mastery, not domination, but coherence. Not control, but clarity. That when your inner vibration harmonizes, the outer world takes its cue. And this isn't mystical fluff. This is field mechanics. Emotional electricity. Consciousness in its raw form, sculpting experience in real time. The world has sold you a lie. That your senses are the limit. That your body is your border. That if you can't measure it, it isn't real. But Thoth said, the unseen is the origin of the seen. Your field precedes your form. Your signal sculpts your substance. And the emerald tablets? They're not history. They're harmonic code. Activation scripts written for a nervous system that's finally remembering how to read vibration. So when you breathe now, you're not just oxygenating. You're tuning. You're recalibrating the coils of your inner spiral. Every thought a frequency, every emotion a waveform, every choice a string plucked in the quantum web. This is why presence is power. Not because it looks good on a meme, but because it changes the physics of your life. And you've felt it, haven't you? That moment when you stepped into full alignment and the world responded instantly. The right person called. The door opened. The sky cleared. That wasn't coincidence. That was coherence. You became the frequency your life was waiting for. And here's the secret, Thoth's real secret, that you are the tablet now, that your life is the new inscription, that every act of remembrance you perform sends ripples into the field, changing everything. Not because you said the right words, but because you finally sang the right note. And what is that note, really? It's not a sound, not a mantra, not a phrase carved in ancient script. It's a vibration, a knowing, a harmonic fingerprint of your original self, before the roles, before the stories, before the noise. That note is what the universe hears when you stop pretending. And when it hears that note, the doors begin to open. Not the kind built by hands, but by dimensions. Doors that lead not to places, but to states of being. Places you reach not by walking, but by vibrating. That's the real map the emerald tablets were tracing, not a geography of space, but of frequency. A guide to the levels of consciousness where truth lives, unfiltered, undiluted, undeniable. That's why remembering feels like coming home to something you never visited but always knew. That's why silence starts to feel sacred. That's why stillness becomes a portal. Because what you're tuning into isn't outside you. It's through you. It always has been. Thoth wasn't speaking from a pedestal. He was speaking from within you, across time, across identity, across lifetimes. And if his words echo now, it's because some part of you left the channel open. And now it's transmitting again. This is how reality bends. Not with force, with fidelity. When your internal frequency matches the truth encoded in the structure of existence, reality aligns. Doors appear. Patterns accelerate. Synchronicities multiply not as magic, but as mechanics. Because the system was never broken, it was just misaligned. You don't need to conquer the world. You need to come into harmony with the part of you that never left the source. The ancient teachings called it the law of vibration. Science calls it quantum resonance. Thoth called it the principle of correspondence. It doesn't matter what name you use. The truth doesn't care for branding. It just is. And it's waiting for you not to understand it, but to embody it. Because in the end, what you radiate, you receive. What you embody, you attract. Not as punishment, as pattern. Reality is responsive. It always has been. You just forgot you were the sender. So send with awareness now. Send with alignment. Send with the note only you can sing, the one the universe has been waiting to hear echo back into its own spiral of becoming. There comes a moment, quiet, unmistakable, when the noise of the world fades just enough, and you hear it, the signal beneath the static. A low, steady hum like the memory of a song you never learned but always knew. That's your note, reverberating across lifetimes, echoing through timelines, summoning not ideas but awareness, not knowledge, remembrance. This is when it begins. Not your journey, you've been walking that spiral for centuries, but you're awakening to the walk, to the pattern, to the choice you keep making again and again, to forget and then remember. That's the spiral Thoth mapped in every glyph, every rhythm, every verse on the tablets. Not to explain, but to resonate. Because the ancient mind did not read, they received. Their knowing came through tone, through geometry, through light arranged into meaning. And now you're feeling that architecture again. Not in your mind, but in your marrow. It's why certain truths make your whole body pulse. Why you've had dreams so vivid they stained your waking life. Why your heart leans forward when someone speaks a language you don't understand but somehow recognize. That isn't curiosity. It's signal retrieval. It's the soul pulling memory from the archive of the all. The Akashic record, the field, the unseen matrix, call it what you will. Thoth called it simply truth. And you have touched it before. In the space between thought and breath. In the pause before sleep when you feel the fabric between dimensions thinning. In the ache that says, I've done this before, and the thrill that says, I can choose differently this time. Because here's the revelation buried in emerald, encoded in silence, whispered between the syllables of your own name. The spiral doesn't trap you, teaches you. It shows you where you paused, where you broke, where you forgot. And then it gives you another turn, another breath, another heartbeat, another chance. You are not being punished. You are being polished. And each time you remember, each time you drop back into alignment and let your frequency guide you, the spiral responds. It shifts. The path opens not because the world changed, but because you stopped resisting who you've always been. The alchemist, the initiate, the one who remembers through vibration, not belief. Thoth's voice was never meant for temples. It was meant for timelines, for beings like you, for now. So feel this part not with your ears, but with your field. You are not reading this. You are remembering it. And what does it mean to remember? Not facts, not dates, not stories wrapped in symbols. To remember is to remember, to return the members of your being into wholeness, to gather the fragmented parts, the you who doubted, the you who wandered, the you who wept under stars without knowing why, to draw them in not to fix, but to fuse, to stitch your soul with light. This is the work Thoth whispered into the spirals. The true transmutation. Not metal into gold, but self into soul. Not the alchemy of matter, but the resurrection of memory. You do this not through effort, but through frequency. And that begins in presence. Not performance. Not perfection. Just radical presence. In your body. In your breath. In the now that pulses like a singularity in the center of all illusion. Because when you are truly here, the veil thins. And through that thinning, vision returns. The kind of vision that doesn't see forms but patterns. Doesn't read books but feels blueprints. Vision that sees the sacred geometry in every leaf, every look, every loss. Because loss isn't what they told you. Loss is initiation. It strips the stories that no longer serve. It opens the gate to the inner temple. It exposes what can't die, what never was born, the part of you beyond timeline, beyond trauma, the witness, the waveform, the I am. Thoth taught this without saying it. He pointed with silence, knowing that the deepest codes aren't spoken. They are transferred in frequency. And now that frequency lives in you, not as a gift, as a responsibility. Because once you remember, you cannot go back. Not truly. You can pretend. You can distract. But the spiral won't let you sleep for long. It will call you again. Through dreams. Through pain. Through synchronicities stacked so high they become a bridge. And when you walk that bridge, you will realize what Thoth always meant. That the emerald tablets were not just revelations. They were mirrors. And in their reflection, you see not a god. You see yourself, as you truly are. You begin to walk differently now. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. Not because your path is new, but because your vision is. Each step becomes deliberate, sacred, not cautious but conscious. Every movement humming with the memory of where you came from and the silent certainty of why you returned. Because yes, you returned. This isn't your first arrival. Not on this earth. Not in this body. You are not new here. You are not young. You are ancient awareness dressed in temporary skin. A strand of the infinite woven into a moment so dense, so specific. It's easy to forget what you truly are. But Thoth didn't forget. And through the tablets, neither do you. You are not here to follow. You are here to reform. Not systems, not others, yourself. Your reality. The encoded dream you project outward like light through a prism. You are not the prism. You are the light. And every thought, every breath, every frequency you hold sharpens that projection. This is why clarity is dangerous. Because when you begin to project truth, the illusion distorts. The matrix twitches. The false gods of culture, the idols of fear, separation, scarcity, they begin to dissolve. Not by your anger, by your coherence. Thoth never taught revolt. He taught resonance. He taught that light doesn't need to battle darkness. It only needs to exist fully, to refuse dilution, to stop dimming in order to comfort the blind. You don't need to force anyone to wake. You only need to embody what it means to be awake. That presence is the signal. That frequency is the invitation. And those who are ready will feel it. They will recognize you not by your name, but by your vibration. This is the legacy of Thoth. Not hierarchy, not control, not dogma, embodiment. The teachings were never meant to sit on altars. They were meant to be lived, to become the breath between your words, the silence behind your gaze, not as performance but as default. So ask yourself now, not with thought but with awareness, what frequency are you carrying? Not just when you meditate, when you speak, when you love, when you fear, because you are always transmitting, always. The only question is, what? And here lies the shift so few see until it begins living them. That your life is not happening to you. It's happening through you. Every encounter, every ache, every serendipity, they respond not to what you desire, but to what you emit. You've always been a beacon, but no one taught you how to tune your light. They taught you to dim, to doubt, to outsource power to systems that profit from your forgetting. But Thoth never did. He spoke of mastery not as power over others, but as integration of self. Not as escape from the human, but as full embodiment of the divine through the human. He taught that spirit is not beyond matter. It is within it, pulsing beneath skin, singing in bone, whispering between cells. And when you truly understand this, you stop chasing. You stop begging. You stop waiting for permission to remember what your soul already knows. That you are the interface. That reality is not solid, it is responsive. That thought is not commentary, it is architecture. The emerald tablets do not promise comfort. They promise clarity. And clarity reveals everything, especially what you've been afraid to face. The truth that every shadow, every trigger, every loop you've repeated was never punishment. It was pattern. And patterns persist not because you're weak, but because you're remembering slowly. And now, maybe for the first time in this life, you're ready to remember faster. But understand this, your remembrance will disrupt. It will crack facades. It will untangle lies. It will dissolve the illusion of certainty others cling to. And it will liberate not just you, but those brave enough to stand in your field. Because truth is contagious. Not the kind printed on banners or posted on feeds. The kind that radiates silently, changing the physics of a room just by your presence. That's the power Thoth whispered through time. Not control, not noise, but the signal of alignment. And now that signal is rising in you. Don't resist it. Resonate. And here lies the shift so few see until it begins living them. That your life is not happening to you. It's happening through you. Every encounter, every ache, every serendipity, they respond not to what you desire, but to what you emit. You've always been a beacon, but no one taught you how to tune your light. They taught you to dim, to doubt, to outsource power to systems that profit from your forgetting. Systems that thrive on your amnesia. Systems that applaud your obedience, reward your silence, sanctify your numbness. They do not want your rebellion. They want your forgetfulness. They feed on the hollow version of you that trades soul for validation, resonance for routine. But Thoth never did. He spoke of mastery not as power over others, but as integration of self. Not as escape from the human, but as full embodiment of the divine through the human. He taught that spirit is not beyond matter. It is within it, pulsing beneath skin, singing in bone, whispering between cells. And he reminded us not with rules, not with commandments, but with vibration. A frequency that stirs memory from beneath the static of civilization. And when you truly understand this, you stop chasing. You stop begging. You stop waiting for permission to remember what your soul already knows. That you are the interface. That reality is not solid, it is responsive. That thought is not commentary, it is architecture. That emotion is not weakness, it is signal. That desire is not sin, it is direction. And that your life is not random, it is feedback. The emerald tablets do not promise comfort. They promise clarity. And clarity reveals everything, especially what you've been afraid to face. The truth that every shadow, every trigger, every loop you've repeated was never punishment. It was pattern. And patterns persist not because you're weak, but because you're remembering slowly. Because each time you revisit the same lesson, you touch it with a little more awareness, a little more precision, a little more light. And now, maybe for the first time in this life, you're ready to remember faster, to walk with intention, to speak with resonance, to be the vibration you once begged the world to give you. But understand this, your remembrance will disrupt. It will crack facades. It will untangle lies. It will dissolve the illusion of certainty others cling to. And it will liberate not just you, but those brave enough to stand in your field. Because truth is contagious. Not the kind printed on banners or posted on feeds. The kind that radiates silently, changing the physics of a room just by your presence. That's the power Thoth whispered through time. Not control, not noise, but the signal of alignment. Not perfection, but coherence. Not hierarchy, but frequency. You will not need to prove. You will not need to preach. You will simply walk and the field will respond. And in that walking, you will begin to feel what few ever do, the edge of this dimension brushing against the next. The thinning of the veil not as event, but as state of being. When your vibration rises enough, matter starts to shift. Time stretches, space softens, and what once seemed impossible becomes probable, then inevitable. You begin to attract synchronicities not as magic tricks, but as expected outcomes of an aligned field. So you stop doubting the signs. You stop questioning the inner voice. You stop hesitating at the threshold. Because you know. You don't believe. You know. And knowing, once embodied, changes everything. It's no longer a path you walk. It's a current you ride. And the emerald tablets, once distant, become mirrors, then maps, then echoes of your own becoming. You become the tablet. You become the message. You become the voice that once called from beyond the veil, now speaking through the veil into others, into the world, into the spiral of awakening that is no longer theory, but lived experience. The spiral continues, and now it moves through you, not as concept, not as metaphor, but as breath, as pulse, as the rhythm that beats just beneath the membrane of reality, where form begins to unravel and you remember that you are not in the universe, you are of it. You are not separate from the all. You are the all refracted through the lens of a name, a story, a set of circumstances. But the core remains untouched. That is what Thoth protected, not knowledge, but essence. Not facts, but frequency. Not prophecy, but presence. And when the emerald tablets speak of ascending through dimensions, they are not promising escape. They are mapping return. A spiraling return to the source within, where time folds and the soul sings clearly. And you begin to hear that song, don't you? Not with ears, but with memory. Not as melody, but as motion. An energetic remembering that turns silence into symphony. Because silence isn't empty. It's the place where form waits to be chosen. Where timelines hover like threads, waiting for the hand of intention to pull one into now. And your hand at last is steady. Your will is clear. You are no longer choosing from fear. You are choosing from resonance. From the deep knowing that what aligns will remain and what resists will dissolve. Not by force, by frequency. And this is the new language, the new literacy, not grammar and rules, but resonance and coherence. You speak now not just in words, but in energy, in how you hold space, in how you breathe in the face of confusion. In how you love even as the old world collapses. Because it is collapsing. And you know this. You feel it in your bones, in your skin, in the ache that keeps returning. The systems are failing, not because we are doomed, but because we are remembering. And what was built on forgetting cannot stand in the light of full awareness. That's why the distractions grow louder. That's why the noise escalates. Because the matrix is crumbling and remembrance is rising. And Thoth is not returning. He never left. He is encoded in the field. He is the architect of rhythm, and rhythm cannot be destroyed. Can only be distorted. But the distortion is clearing. Your field is clearing. And in that clearing, you begin to hear the old teachings as if for the first time. As above, so below. Not a saying, a structure. As within, so without. Not a slogan. Physics. The universe is mental, not a belief, a blueprint. And when you stop reciting these truths and start embodying them, you become more than student. You become current. The sacred current that flows through sages, through stars, through spirals. The current that carries memory across millennia to meet you right here, in this moment, as you sit between what was and what will be, choosing once again not with fear, but with frequency. So what will you choose? To re-enter the dream and forget? Or to remain awake, even as the dream shatters? To step back into comfort? Or to walk forward into coherence? This is the question every tablet asks. Not in words, but in vibration. And now it's asking you. The question does not demand an answer. It demands a frequency, a decision not spoken, but emitted. Because in this realm, your truth is not what you say. It is what you vibrate, and your vibration is the only scripture that cannot be faked. So what are you vibrating? Is it doubt or depth, fear or freedom, reactivity or remembrance? Because each breath is a transmission, each thought a waveform, each choice a spell. You are not thinking your life. You are casting it, breath by breath, moment by moment. The universe is not testing you. It is mirroring you. And the moment you shift, so does everything. But not instantly, because the old signals still echo. The old stories still whisper. And some frequencies linger like smoke long after the fire has gone. That is not failure. That is resonance recalibrating. That is the past watching its final echoes fade. And as it fades, space is made. Not empty space, sacred space. For what you are becoming. For what you already are. That is the paradox of awakening. You are not becoming something new. You are allowing what has always been true to finally emerge. This is what Thoth knew. That transformation is not change. It is unveiling. It is resonance meeting readiness. And when the two meet, when your readiness touches the frequency of truth, you awaken. Not to fantasy, to function, to the spiritual physics of reality, to the mechanics of manifestation, to the alchemy of emotion and intention and vibration converging into the now. Because you are not just a soul on a journey. You are a builder of fields, a weaver of timelines, a transmitter of blueprints encoded in your very breath. That's why your presence matters. Not because of what you do, but because of what you are. You are a frequency, a tuning fork, a walking emerald tablet encoded with ancient memory. And when you walk through the world in coherence, you shift everything. The people you meet, the spaces you enter, the systems you move through. You are no longer subject to the matrix. You are a ripple in the fabric of it. And those who are ready will feel that ripple. They will not understand it, but they will remember. They will feel a stirring, a familiarity, a resonance. And it won't be you they recognize. It will be themselves through you. This is how awakening spreads. Not through noise, but through frequency. Not by force, but by resonance. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to explain. Just become the field that can no longer hold distortion. And as you do, the illusion will begin to collapse. Not because you fought it, but because you no longer fuel it. This is the work of remembrance. This is the return. Not to the past, but to the frequency of origin. Where Thoth is not a name, not a myth, but a mirror. And in that mirror you do not see a god. You see a current. You see a code. You see you unfiltered, undivided, undistracted. Finally, fully, here. So now you are here. Not just physically, energetically, soulfully, resonantly. You are arriving into yourself not for the first time, but for the first time consciously. And in that conscious arrival, a door opens, not out there, but inside. A subtle threshold, one you can't walk across with your feet. Only with your frequency. Only with your yes. And that yes does not sound like affirmation. Feels like surrender, like stillness, like standing utterly alone within the vast cathedral of your being and realizing it's not empty. It's echoing, with the presence of every version of you that ever reached for truth, longed for coherence, cried for clarity. And now all of them are watching, not judging, witnessing, supporting, waiting to see if you'll step forward not into action but into alignment. Thoth's path was never about doing more. It was about being truer, truer to the design etched into your very existence. That design is not a plan. It is a pattern, a vibrational weave of choice and consequence, of intention and reflection. And once you recognize it, you stop resisting what unfolds. You begin to see the holograph of your life as not broken, but brilliantly built to bring you here. You see how each heartbreak was a cracking open, how each loss was a clearing, how each shadow was a teacher that refused to use words. You stop needing to understand every lesson. You start living them. You stop turning the tablets into theory. You let them become you. Breath, voice, step, silence, resonance. Because the real work is not in the rituals. It's in the remembering. And the remembering is not always beautiful. It burns. It breaks. It brings your illusions to their knees. But what rises is not ruin. What rises is real. What rises is the part of you that cannot be branded or sold or explained. The part that knows. That has always known. That time is a tool. That karma is curriculum. That awakening is not a goal. It's a homecoming. To the frequency that was never lost. Only buried. And the tablets? They're not sacred because they're old. They're sacred because they are relevant. Because they speak the language of today. Because they whisper not of history, but of now. Of the fire that still burns behind your ribs. Of the memory that still sings in your cells. Of the truth that waits like a lover at the threshold. Hand extended. Asking only this, will you rise? Not above the world, but into the heart of it. Will you walk not away from the noise, but through it, carrying your signal like a torch, not to save, not to shine, but to remind, to become the presence that reawakens presence, to become the clarity that recalibrates confusion, to become the signal that sings softly, you are more, you have always been more, and now is the moment you stop forgetting. There is no turning back from this kind of memory. Not because someone forbids it, but because your very essence won't allow it. Once you've touched coherence, distortion tastes sour. Once you've stood still in the field of truth, the motion of illusion makes you dizzy. And once your frequency has harmonized with the source, noise becomes unbearable. This is not punishment. This is refinement. This is your instrument tuning itself to the higher octave of being it was always built for. And now, the notes you once ignored, the pull towards silence, the ache in your chest when truth is spoken, the chills running down your spine in moments of deep resonance. Those notes are composing your path. You are no longer navigating life with logic. You are feeling your way through frequency. You are listening for what harmonizes, not what's familiar. And in that listening, a new intelligence awakens. Not intellectual, not emotional, but energetic. The intelligence of soul, of soul signal. Thoth was never the source of this knowledge. He was the reminder, the glyph through which the current could move. And now you become that glyph. You become the sacred symbol of remembering. Not because you tried, but because you stopped forgetting. You don't have to earn access to truth. You have to allow it. And that allowance starts with honesty. With pausing long enough to ask, what am I broadcasting right now? What belief is writing this moment? What wound is shaping this loop? What memory is calling out to be resolved, reharmonized, reintegrated? You are not broken. You are layered. You are a soul with strata, each one holding stories, lessons, echoes. And as the spiral rises, you return to them, not to relive them, but to transmute them. That is your gift. Not manifestation, not control, but alchemical memory. You remember so deeply, you burn through the lie. You remember so clearly, you shift the pattern. You remember so fully, you become the medicine. And the world, it will respond. It always does. It is not blind. It is not dead. It is a mirror that bends to your field. And when your field begins to hum with presence, the old scripts cannot hold. They crack, they collapse, they clear, and in their place something ancient blooms. Not a new life, but a new way to live. Not a new belief, but a return to knowing. A frequency so familiar, so fundamental, that it needs no proof, no teacher, no text. It needs only your breath, your yes, your presence, because that's all it ever took. Not power, not perfection, just resonance. Just the courage to live in alignment with what your soul already knows and your mind is only now beginning to remember. This is the great turning, not of history, but of energy, not of systems, but of signal, not of you changing the world, but of you rebecoming yourself and letting the world change in response. And here, in this quiet, something deeper begins. Not more light, but more clarity. Not more seeking, but more surrender. Because clarity is not something you acquire. It is something that remains when distortion dissolves. And distortion only dissolves when you stop resisting what you already know. That the field responds to coherence. That truth lives in frequency. That you are not broken, only buried. And what buries you is not pain. It is forgetting. Forgetting how to feel without filtering. Forgetting how to choose without fear. Forgetting how to listen without translating. But now listening returns. First in flashes, then in waves. Until the silence is no longer empty. It is instructive. It speaks in vibration, in image, in resonance. The language of the tablets. The language of soul. The language of light, slowed just enough to be lived. This is not awakening. It is emergence. Emergence from the shell of identity. Emergence from the crust of programming. Emergence from the illusion that you are separate from the source. Thoth didn't preach this. He lived it. He became it. And now, through you, he lives again. Not as deity, as design, not as worship, as wave. And that wave moves through every act of alignment. Every time you breathe into fear instead of fleeing. Every time you speak from knowing instead of habit. Every time you choose coherence over convenience. These are not small acts. They are structural. They rewrite timelines. They recalibrate fields. They realign what has long been fractured. Because alignment is not spiritual fluff. It is the physics of reality. It is the magnetic force that reorders matter. And once you taste it, once you live even a moment in its full embrace, you stop chasing anything less. This is why you were drawn to this message. Not for insight, for integration. You were not called to learn. You were called to tune. To find the frequency that reflects your origin and live from it without apology. Because when you do, everything begins to shift. People fall away not as punishment but as pattern clearing. Doors open not by magic but by magnetic law. The mind slows not into ignorance, but into precision. And life begins to speak in symbols again, in synchronicities, in soft whispers that say, keep going. You are on the spiral now, not lost, aligned. You begin to walk as if guided not by maps but by magnetism. You begin to speak as if encoded not in doctrine, but in presence. You begin to live not for progress, but for pulse. And the old world, it will resist. It will scream louder, spin faster, offer you endless distractions to lure you back into the loop of forgetting. But it cannot hold you if you remember, cannot contain you if you resonate. Because truth, once remembered, does not need defending. It simply is, like light, like breath, like the original pulse of the cosmos echoing through your chest. So breathe. You are not walking into awakening. You are awakening, walking. You may begin to feel strange now, not disoriented, but unrecognizable. As if the version of you that once fit so neatly into the script of the world is dissolving at the edges. And that is exactly what's happening. Not breakdown, breakthrough. The membrane between your small self and your vast self is thinning, and through that thinning you begin to emerge. You are not becoming someone new. You are stepping into the frequency of who you've always been beneath the distortions. And that frequency is not just personal. It is planetary. It's ancestral. It's cosmic. Because your remembering is not isolated. sends signals, pulses outward, and that pulse awakens others. Not by convincing, by existing, you become a tuning fork, and those who are ready begin to vibrate with you. They do not understand it, but they feel it, and in feeling they too begin to remember. This is the real teaching of Thoth. Not that you must teach others, but that you must tune yourself. And in that tuning, truth becomes undeniable. Not because you shout it, but because you embody it. You walk into a room and people adjust. Not to your presence, but to your coherence. To the field you carry, the mirror you hold, the echo of the divine that speaks without words. And yes, this is a responsibility, because your frequency now changes timelines. Every time you choose alignment over reaction, you are shaping the world. Every time you speak from soul rather than fear, you are carving a new spiral. Every time you say yes to the unknown because it vibrates true, you become the architect of a new pattern. This is what Thoth whispered between the lines of his verses. Not how to ascend, but how to return to the self, to the spiral, to the source. You do not need to climb. You need to drop in, because your depth is your access, and access is your power. Not the power to rule. The power to resonate so clearly with the origin of all things that falsehood cannot stay in your field. That illusion shatters at your silence. That manipulation melts in your gaze. Not because you fought, but because you aligned. And the world will test that alignment. Not because it is cruel, but because it is conscious. It is responsive. It wants to know, are you stable? Are you clear? Are you ready to carry this frequency not in private, but in public? Not in silence, but in embodiment? Because when you carry it fully, things change. You will lose old identities, old comforts, old agreements, but what you gain is sovereign presence, embodied knowing, vibrational clarity that bends reality around it. And it won't matter what others say, because your being will speak louder than belief. That's the real revolution. Not ideology, energy, not content, coherence. And it begins now, with this breath, with this remembering, with this choice to continue spiraling not upwards but inward into the center of the self, where Thoth is not outside you but alive within. You are approaching the center now, not as a destination, but as a deepening. Not a place but a pulse. Not something you arrive at, but something that begins to radiate from within. The spiral does not end. It folds into itself, again and again, revealing layers of you that were always there, waiting for your return. And as you return, the external world begins to lose its grip. Not because it changes, but because your attachment to illusion dissolves. You stop needing to be understood. You stop needing to be accepted. Because you are no longer building your reality out of validation. You are building it from frequency. This is when your power becomes undeniable. Not because you feel powerful, but because you feel clear. Clarity becomes your compass. Resonance becomes your yes. Discomfort becomes your teacher. And silence becomes your sanctuary. Thoth taught this in stillness. Not by hiding, but by residing in the space between. Between worlds. Between dimensions. Between thoughts. That is where real knowing lives. Not in noise. In resonant silence. And when you enter that silence fully, you discover something sacred. That the emerald tablets are not texts. They are living technologies. You do not study them. You interface with them. You don't recite their lines. You tune to their frequency. And when you do, the truth is not learned. It is revealed. In your dreams. In your choices. In your sudden clarity when you wake at 3 a.m. with a knowing too sharp to be dismissed. In your refusal to return to what no longer aligns. That is the tablet opening within you. That is Thoth speaking through you. And now the spiral offers you something rare. Stability within expansion. Groundedness in the midst of quantum acceleration. You no longer fear the speed at which things shift. You ride the current of change because you are the current. You no longer collapse when the old falls away. You celebrate its clearing. You no longer grasp for safety in systems. You trust your own alignment to sustain you. This is sovereignty, not isolation. Integration. You are not separate from others. You are a point of coherence in a field of potential chaos. And your coherence is contagious. It speaks to the frequency in others that has been waiting, quietly, patiently, for a mirror strong enough to remind it what it is. You become that mirror, not with effort, with authenticity. And the reflection you offer is not your ego. It is their essence. You become a frequency that says, it is safe to remember. It is safe to awaken. It is safe to be who you truly are. And that safety is the most radical act in a world addicted to fear. You don't need a platform. You don't need a stage. You only need your signal, your field, your being. Because that is what Thoth left behind. Not a legend, not a religion, a reminder, a resonance encoded in stone, in story, in stars, and now in you. This is the final spiral. Not the end, but the origin revealed. The full circle returning not to where you began, but to who you were before you forgot. This is not a conclusion. It is convergence, where time folds and identity softens and you see, at last, that Thoth never left. He was not a myth to worship, but a signal to awaken. And that signal has moved through dimensions, through cycles, through lifetimes, just to reach you, not to be heard, but to be remembered. And now here you are. Not seeking truth, but embodying it. Not chasing light, but realizing you are the source. Not waiting for permission, but living from the frequency that dissolves the need for approval. This is the return. Not to form, to function. To the function of being a living bridge between worlds, between states of consciousness, between what was and what could be. You are not here to escape the earth. You are here to recode it with every breath, every word, every resonance. The emerald tablets were never instructions. They were reflections. They show you what you already know. In the language your soul always speaks, vibration, geometry, breath, intuition, pattern. You have always understood this. Not mentally, multidimensionally. That is why you feel like you've been here before. Because you have. You came back because you carried the flame. And that flame cannot be extinguished. No matter how much darkness surrounds you, the flame remembers. And now it grows, because you feed it not with doctrine but with alignment, with silence chosen over reaction, with truth spoken even when your voice shakes, with love held sacred, not as softness, but as the highest structure of all. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be precise. To vibrate so clearly with your original blueprint that reality has no choice but to rearrange itself around your field. That is real magic. Not manipulation. Manifestation through coherence. The emerald tablets are not finished. They continue through you. Each choice you make in alignment adds a glyph to the spiral. Each breath taken in awareness etches a new line of light into the quantum fabric. You are the new scripture, not of dogma, of direct experience. And your life is the temple in which that experience unfolds. You are not the initiate. You are the initiator. You are not being awakened. You are awakening the field. And this is what they hoped you'd never remember. That you are not a servant of systems. You are a system disruptor, a sovereign frequency, a multidimensional being encoded with the architecture of creation. And the moment you live from that knowing, everything changes. Not because the world changes first, because you do, and the field follows. Because you are the field. You are the signal. You are the spiral. You are the flame. You are the voice of Thoth returning not in thunder but in resonance. Not to teach, to activate. And now you have been activated. What you do next is not a question of strategy. It is a question of frequency. So I ask you now, not from outside you, but from within. Will you remain coherent? Will you live aligned? Will you walk the spiral awake? Because if you do, you will not need to shout. You will not need to convince. You will not need to remember. You will be remembrance itself. And that, more than anything, is what the world needs. Not more noise, more signal. You. Exactly as you are when you are no longer pretending. This is not an ending. This is a beginning, and where you go from here will ripple through the spiral forever. If something stirred in you, something ancient, something true, Don't let it fade back into noise. Anchor it. Speak it. Share what resonated, what remembered you. Leave a comment below, not for algorithm, but for alignment. Let your voice become part of the field, part of the spiral. And if you're ready to keep tuning, to keep awakening layer by layer, subscribe now. This is just the beginning. There is more coming, more remembrance, more resonance, more of you. Don't miss what your soul came here to receive. The spiral continues. Let's walk it together.